Hello, and thanks for joining me today for this quick webinar about thinking outside the box. I hope you will find the next 20 minutes insightful and beneficial to you as you progress in your product management career. A quick disclaimer before we begin. Everything I'll share today is based on my own personal experience and as such is told from my own point of view. You will likely hear other speakers claiming contradicting perspective to what I will say, or I might contradict something you heard before. That is great. I believe that each and every one of you should take all of these pieces of information and form your own perspective. My only ask is that you listen to this webinar with an open mind and later decide if it works for you or not. Before we begin, I want you all to go and grab a square piece of paper. Doesn't matter what kind of paper it is. A square toilet paper will do if that's what you've got handy. I'll wait about 10-15 seconds so you can go and grab it, and then we'll continue. Okay, I hope you got the paper and you are ready to go, because I'm about to share the technique that will make each and every one of you at least 10 times more creative than you really are. So please follow my instructions to the letter. Start by folding your paper in half so it will form a rectangle. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to do this. I know that that's a difficult task to do. Cool. I hope that you got it done. Now I want you to fold it in half again, but this time fold it along the long part of the rectangle so it will form a square again. Again, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. Wait, for the last part, I want you to fold it in half from one of the points so it will form a triangle. I hope you all managed to do so, and no worries if you didn't. Place the paper triangle aside as we will discuss it later. So let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Snai, born and raised in Israel, and currently living in Silicon Valley, California, USA. I recently joined Amazon Lab 126 as a Senior Product Manager Technical. Before we jump into things, I want to share a bit about my professional journey. Back in 2003, I enlisted to the Israeli Air Force as an air traffic control and ground controller interceptor. I served as an officer for about 6 years and finished my service as a captain. In 2009, I joined Elbit System, which is the biggest homeland security company in Israel. At Elbit, I had many different positions, including product design, systems engineering, and technical product management. This is where I got to experience working on a multidisciplinary role, and I realized that product management is what I'm passionate about, but at the same time, I knew that I was lacking basic marketing skills. With that in mind, I enrolled to get my MBA from Kellogg School of Management, which is known to be one of the best MBAs for marketers, and I graduated with a major in marketing. Between my first and second year at Kellogg, I joined Google, or more specifically YouTube Data, as a product manager intern, where I worked on a great product, which I'll share later on this webinar. After graduating from Kellogg, I rejoined Google, this time to Android Framework, as a product manager. Working at Google was amazing, and I've learned so much about how critical it is to give a fresh new perspective to solutions that were embedded for years. As I said before, I recently joined Amazon as a Senior Product Manager Technical, and I'm excited about the interesting work we are doing at Amazon. Okay, now let's dive into the reason why you all joined this webinar. One of my mentors said something that I truly believe in, and as such, I would love to share it with you all. It goes like this. If 10 out of 10 people in the room agree on something, did we really need to have 10 people? I'll let it sink in for a second. I really love this quote because it embodies some of the core responsibilities I think a product manager has, which is to be non-conformist. We will discuss later on how to do so, but always remember that it's up to you to make sure that the team isn't going to have a herd mentality in which it's easy to just agree and keep the status quo. There are many different techniques to out-of-the-box thinking, and I urge you to keep exploring after this webinar and learn about as many of them as you can. but I will focus on 3 which I think are not given the respect they deserve. By the end of this webinar, you all will be able to properly use the devil's advocate role. You will understand the value of being the odd one out, and you will start asking many dumb questions. Now, please pick up your folded piece of paper, look at it closely, and now you can throw it away into the trash. I want you all to take a second and ask yourself, at any point did I stop to ask myself, how does folding this piece of paper has anything to do with being creative? I can assume that most of you, if not all of you, didn't stop and ask that, and that is completely natural. I am the speaker, and as such, you assume I am proficient in the topic we are discussing and that you should listen to my instructions. The most important thing, which everything else we will discuss relies on, is that you need to be skeptical of what you are told. You are probably going to work with some of the smartest people out there, and if we feel it will feel natural to take what they say as the absolute truth. I would argue that in order to think out of the box, you need to question that everything, that belief, and try to find out for yourself if what you are told is true or not. Don't get me wrong. Nobody is intentionally trying to misguide you, trick you, or sabotage you. But people get set in their ways, and as such, they believe that what they know and have been doing for a while is the only way to go. So, to quote one of my favorite TV shows growing up, trust no one. As opposed to common belief, I would claim that no one is born a creative thinker and is just gifted that way. Out-of-the-box thinking is a discipline and not a skill. This means that it is an acquired ability, which is great, because it means that each and every one of you could do it if you just give it a try and keep working and perfecting it. Let's begin with the devil's advocate. What is a devil's advocate, you might ask? Well, according to dictionary.com, a devil's advocate is a person who advocates an opposing or unpopular cause for the sake of an argument or to expose it to thorough examination. Now, I'll be honest, and I will share that I am a person who loves to argue, and you can ask my friends, wife, and family. But for the context of our talk, let's focus on the part of exposing it to a thorough examination. I want to share with you an example in which I use the devil's advocate, as I hope it will demonstrate the benefits of this technique. As I joined YouTube Data as a product manager, in turn, I was given a problem statement regarding the need for YouTube to be able to predict if a video from a specific creator is likely to succeed or fail in terms of numbers of views. If it fails, we would also love to know what might be the root cause for this failed video. This specific problem has been tackled by at least 3 teams across YouTube during the past 2 years prior to me joining YouTube. The approach all 3 teams took was to try and decide what might be the most affecting list of top 5 parameters and to analyze them in order to make a prediction. This concept was founded by statistical modeling, claiming that those parameters are significantly more important than anything else to determine the success of a video. When I joined, I was told that this is the best approach and that I should pick my top parameter out of the 5 and focus on it. As I studied, I came to the realization that maybe we need to do things differently and not focus on just those 5 parameters, but instead look at each and every parameter we have, as minor as it might be. But how do I pitch it to the team? In the next team meeting, I created a plan of record based on their advice to focus on one of the top 5 parameters. But I also added a devil's advocate section in which I asked, what if our underlying assumption that within those 5 parameters hides the root cause? For all we know, a video might be underperforming because the creator wore a red shirt for that specific video and the creator's audience just hates the color red. So they're just not buying in and they're not watching. This spun off a great discussion in the team, and I ended up deciding to create a new model that looks over each and every parameter we have, and I'm glad to say that this model outperformed any previous model and was, and still is, being used by YouTube. This couldn't have worked without using the devil's advocate that forced the team to consider alternatives to the old ways, which optimizes the end solution. Other advantages of using the devil's advocate are that even if you end up with the same solution you had before, now you might have found some loopholes in your plan, which you will be able to close and shut down, and you can sell your solution better to leadership or customers by showing that you eliminated all other options and alternatives. Let's get a bit technical here for a second and discuss best practices to using it. Make sure you announce you are playing the devil's advocate. This will remove any confusion to the team that you are not supportive of their solution and are not going on a tangent. Use the devil's advocate when appropriate, meaning internal team discussions is a great place to use it. But I would avoid doing this with the customer or during a pitch to leadership. Remember, and this is very important, it is your job as the product manager to do this. Nobody else will do so if you won't do it. I'm going to say something, and it's a bit pointy, so bear with me. I believe that a comfortable product manager is a mediocre product manager. Let's think about that for a few seconds, and then we'll continue. What do I mean by saying that? I mean that if you are sitting in a position in which you feel you know everything and everything is smooth sailing, then you're probably not living to your full potential. How do you get yourself out of that comfortable situation? You go to where you are the odd one out. Now, being the odd one out feels unintuitive because it goes against our instinct to be where we fit and where we have the required skills and knowledge to succeed. Furthermore, it is scary to be an outsider, as group mentality is a real thing and people tend to be suspicious of people who think differently from them. So why am I telling you to do this? Because it worked for me on many occasions. One of them was when I joined Elbit System drone product design team as the only one in the team with no drone operating experience. In order to be good at product design, which, by the way, I think is a great skill for any product manager, one must be familiar with the journey the customer is going through, and I just didn't have the experience of operating drones as opposed to everyone else on the team. But the main difference was that everyone on the team learned how to operate drones in the same place, using the same methodologies. And as such, they were all working the same way. Because I didn't have the experience, I started from scratch and spent hours and hours with our clients, which allowed me to see things that were not visible to the other team members, such as how to design an emergency landing sequence, completely different than what we've done before. My team members all had background in aviation studies before ever flying a drone, and their design was based on an understanding of basic aeronautical concepts. I realized that our clients might not have that basic aeronautic skills, and we redesigned the entire sequence based on my perspective. This enabled us to have a simpler, more intuitive solution. My manager asked me later how I came up with this approach to the emergency landing problem, to which I answered that because I didn't know beforehand what is considered to be the optimal solution, I was forced to try it out until I found what works for me and for our clients. I hope that when you are thinking about the next step in your career, you stop for a second and see if there's anything you are passionate about, but that you know you are not the natural fit for. Even if you do not meet the minimum required qualifications for the role, try to network your way into for an interview and explain during the interview why you being the odd one out is a positive and not a negative. Let's move on to one of my favorite techniques, the dumb questions. So when I joined Android, I was ramping up on the technical details of my product where I came across what appears to be a major design loophole that could be a privacy issue if we launch the feature as planned. Being surrounded by some of the smartest people I've ever met, I was sure that this wasn't an oversight, and I probably am just misunderstanding it. Yet, at the next team meeting, I felt like I must speak up and check if this is actually an oversight or not. But how do I do this without coming off as the new guy, being arrogant, someone who thinks he knows everything? And more so, I knew that there's a big chance that I am probably wrong. So what I did is I used the dumb question. I asked the senior engineer if I can ask a dumb question. Then I asked if the loophole I noticed is indeed a loophole, coming from a very honest and straightforward place. The entire team was shocked. Nobody thought about the scenario I presented that exposes the loophole. We were able to fix the code before the feature launch and avoided potential privacy issue for our users. Why I suggest asking dumb questions? It shows you are vulnerable and thus creates empathy on the receiving end. It removes any potential antagonism that might be perceived as you undermining someone because you are just trying to see if you have the misunderstanding or there's actually another solution. And it allows you to learn without appearing as not knowledgeable. Keep in mind, when you're new to a team, you basically have a blank check to use as many dumb questions as possible. This doesn't mean you should stop asking them once you have been at the team for a while, but you should probably adjust the frequency of them. As a rule of thumb, I wouldn't ask more than one dumb question per meeting. Let's quickly recap what we discussed today. We discussed devil's advocate and how critical it is, and I want to remind you that it is up to you as the product manager to be the devil's advocate. I explained why putting yourself in uncomfortable positions might be great for your future career, and we explained why dumb questions are a positive tool. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this webinar, and would kindly ask that you leave feedback in the comment section on what you took away from this webinar. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.